Rusty Quill presents the Magnus Archives.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Magnus Archives. So, we have already touched on 3 episodes so far, and I want to get us to get a lot more of those episodes in. So, the next episode, as you can see on this lovely little sheet, is Magnus Archives, episode number 4. Again, I'll show pictures here and here because this is also a 2-pager, and it's called Page Turner. So we're gonna be turning pages. That was very corny, I know. So this is around 2012 to 2013. We have Dom Swain. He went originally to go see about like a past hookup, and like she was having like a little theater get together thing, and he was like, oh, let me try to like go over and watch her show and like try to, you know, like get back with her or whatever. And he had some time before the show, so he decided, let's walk around for a little bit, let's go to a bookstore. And he actually found a charity shop, which is what they call it, and he walked around in there for a bit until he found this book that he thought looked really interesting. For only like £4, it was a leather-bound book, and it looked very expensive because it looked like it was used with real leather. Now, on this leather-bound book said ex atoria, which in Latin he kind of guessed around and was like, maybe it means like from higher or out of heights. So he was trying to guess around as to what this Latin term meant, but he kind of didn't really know much since he only knew the very basic of Latin. When he opened the book, he found out that it said it was from the library of Jürgen Leitner. So this is the first time that Jürgen Leitner will be mentioned, but he's coming back, so please keep that in mind. So it says it's from Jürgen Leitner, so he decides to like kind of like skim through the book, see if it has any pictures. The first picture that he comes across is a picture just of clouds, and he finds himself kind of feeling a little bit at an unease, feeling like he's like floating or falling through it. So then he quickly turns the pages, and then he sees like pages of cliffs, pages of towers, and then what felt like 5 minutes actually was more like 30 to 40 minutes. So he completely lost track of time and was like, oh shit, let me like figure out what the fuck I'm gonna do. So then he goes to her play, and then he comes back, and they end up not working. So he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna focus on this book, which good for you, sir, good for you. And so he focuses on this book, and he's Googling it, and he can only find one other book that was put on eBay by some guy who said that he had a Jürgen Leitner book, but that was the only thing that he could really find about it. So he went to a wide variety of book dealers, showed them the book. They were like, yeah, this book is expensive. A lot of them couldn't figure out who the guy was, who Jürgen Leitner was, except for this one book dealer. Now, this one book dealer said that Leitner had many books, and that book specifically was just about 100 years old, maybe even more than that. And he said that the book was handmade, like the cover and the eel, I think it's called, was handmade. He found out from this book dealer that there's a woman named Mary Key that he should learn a little bit more about. So he was like, okay, I don't know who the fuck Mary Key is, so I'll figure out who it is. So he goes to figure out who Mary Key is, but he also starts to get a bit more dizzy and nauseous. And so he finds himself just going on a walk to kind of get rid of the sickness that he's feeling. But he walks straight to somewhere called Pinhole Books. Now, when he walks into Pinhole Books, he sees this woman who's a bit old, has tattoos, come in and greet him because he was like knocking really hard on the door. Now, he was telling her like, oh, hey, I have this book. I'd like to know more about it. Mind you, Mary had literal death music playing in the background, like heavy beat metal. And so he was yelling over this music, and she was like, oh, "We're closed, you have an appointment?" And he was like, "No, but I have a Lightner book." And then her eyes lit up completely when he said Lightner. So she completely turns around and she starts walking up the stairs, not inviting him in or anything, so he just kind of follows her. As he gets into the bookstore, he sees that there's a bunch of books just from the top of the wall to the bottom of the wall all around. And he's just kind of trying to figure out what the woman is saying, and he realizes that the music isn't playing anymore. So he couldn't figure out, like, if she turned off the music, if the music was never a thing to begin with. And so he starts to smell this weird ozone smell that is a bit familiar to him, but he can't put his finger on it. And so that's when he realizes that there is an old desk over in the corner with a bunch of razor wire on the desk, which is very important. Remember, razor wire on an old desk. So then she shares in this really happy tone that she has a Lightner book of her own, which you will learn is very creepy. So she passes her book through like a shadow, and a bunch of animal bones come out that are really like curved into like weird shapes, which is so weird. And then as he's watching this, he's kind of like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is it being pushed through the shadow? Like, why is there so many fucking bones coming out of it? And so he was scared to pass his book through the shadow, and she kind of wanted to pass his book through the shadow, but he kind of ran away before it could happen. And so he went back home, and he then remembered the memory as to why he was smelling the ozone. He had a childhood friend, which this guy is very important, I have learned. My friend spoiled it for me a little bit, which I'm a bit sad about. But he has a friend from childhood who, when they were kids, they asked to go out in the rain to play together. And his friend and him were playing in the rain, and the friend was like, "Hey, can we go back inside?" And he was like, "No, let's just stay out for a few more minutes." And he said, "Okay." And then his friend ended up getting hit by lightning, and he had like this long streak of like a lightning stain on him, I guess you'd call it, or a burn mark from it. And so that's when he smelled the ozone smell of the skin burning. So then he hears a knock on the door, which is when one of my favorite characters comes in. My other favorite is Tim, but you'll meet Tim later. And that's when Jared, he sees Jared as he opens the door. His name is Gerard, I have heard, so I'm just gonna call him Gerard, but I feel like Jared is like a little bit more suitable for him. And so he looks at him and he's like, "Do you have a Lightner book?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Can I offer you 5,000 pounds for it?" And so Dom immediately accepts, because he was just ready to get rid of the book because he was tired of it. He would have gave it to him probably for like 10 pounds, maybe even less than that. And so Gerard looked confused and decided to go and leave to go get him the money. And so Dom decides to Google Gerard, and that's when he finds out that his mother is Mary Kay, or Mary Key. Tomato. And so that's when he realizes that Mary Key got murdered via, her cause of death was painkillers, but she had hung pieces of her skin on a fishing wire to dry, and they had like writing on it that was Sanskrit, which, a note from before, Mary Key's book was written in Sanskrit. So there could be a connection there as well. And so Gerard comes back and he hands him the envelope, and this whole time Dom is just sitting there like, oh my god, like, who is this random killer guy? And so he doesn't even want to ask him anything other than why. And so as he's asking him why, Jared looks at the book, the title, laughs, puts it in a bin, and sets it on fire. And so once Dom asks why, Gerard says, "Mother doesn't always know what's right for the family." And that's all he says. And that's how the statement ends. And now it's time for the important notes. So this is when we learn that apparently there was a 1994 Lightner incident that was isolated and is very unlikely to be related to this incident. So I guess we're going to learn more about it in the future. And he also tells us that Gertrude was the head archivist for over 50 years, and he was very upset that she did not piece everything together in a very coherent way of recent events. And so he was very concerned, and he was questioning the Leitner books and them being out. So again, this is very, very vague, but of course it's the very beginning of this long story of what the Leitner books is and what it's about. And so apparently Gerard Key had disappeared in 2008, so this is the first sighting of them that they had. And the bookstore, they found out, is closed, unfortunately, so they don't know how exactly this happened. But Tim found in the police report that the language, as I told you before, was written in permanent marker in Sanskrit. So that was the end of this episode, but there'll be more episodes to come every single week, and I will see you guys very soon.